The classroom was a sealed environment, a climate-controlled box where order was law and sound was strictly regulated. The only permitted noise was the study, rhythmic scratching of pens against paper, a collective, diligent whisper that spoke of concentration, sunlight, brutal and geometric, sliced through the tall windows, painting the rows of wooden desks with bright parallel lines. This was the territory of Mrs. Albright, and here attention was not merely encouraged. It was a fundamental, non-negotiable requirement. Dot at the front, Mrs. Albright, precise and immaculate in her neat gray blouse and black skirt, finished writing a complex formula. Her blonde hair, pinned back with military precision, framed a face that rarely betrayed emotion. She was an institution, a symbol of unyielding authority. Her voice, calm but weighted, continued the lecture. Each word a stone placed carefully into a towering structure of knowledge. Dot near the back. Emma, 20 and steeped in the careless confidence of youth, was an agent of entropy. Her standard blue uniform, though crisp, could not mask the slump of her shoulders. Her brown hair fell forward as her head rested lazily on her hand. She was bored, deeply and aggressively bored. She let out a loud, theatrical sigh, a small explosion in the silence. It was a conscious act of defiance, designed to ripple through the rigid atmosphere. A few students flinched, tiny, nervous movements that Emma noted with a flicker of satisfaction. She rolled her eyes dramatically as Mrs. Albright's voice droned on. How long can she possibly drag this out? The thought was acidic, a challenge she felt compelled to vocalize, to inject chaos into the pristine order. This was not about the lesson. It was about the thrill of transgression, the desperate need to shatter the teacher's perfect, infuriating composure. She was restless, and she craved a reaction. She craved control. Asterisk, the air in the room was thick with the scent of chalk dust and old wood. Emma's heart, beneath the crisp fabric of her blue uniform shirt, was beating with a slow, heavy rhythm, a counterpoint to the hurried scratches of the other students' pens. She felt the scrutiny of her peers, a mix of fear, pity, and a morbid curiosity. Mrs. Albright completed the last character of the formula on the board. The tink of the chalk against the slate was momentarily loud. She set the chalk down, and her body turned with a slow, deliberate pivot. Her eyes, cool and pale, settled immediately on Emma. "Emma," she said, her voice dropping slightly, the change in pitch a subtle, immediate signal of a shift in the room's temperature. Her blonde hair did not move. Her face remained composed, but her eye narrowed slightly. "Would you like to share what's so amusing?" The question was not a request. It was an invitation to a formal duel. Emma rose to the challenge. She pushed her chair back, the movement creating a sharp, grating noise that was utterly foreign to Mrs. Albright's classroom. She stood, her arms folded tightly across her chest, a shield of arrogance. "Oh, nothing," Emma smirked, leaning back slightly. Her brown eyes glittered with the thrill of the confrontation. "Just wondering how long it's going to take to get through this again. You've explained it a dozen times already." The murmur that ran through the classroom was less a sound and more a sudden rush of expelled breath. Pen stopped. Time seemed to fracture. The students knew, instinctively, that a boundary had been crossed. A serious line of demarcation not just between student and teacher, but between order and insubordination. Mrs. Albright's composure tightened, like a sheet of steel being drawn taut. She set the chalk down with a deliberate clink, brushing her hands together as if to dismiss the dust and Emma's insolence simultaneously. "Stand up," she ordered. Emma, already standing, pushed her chair further back. The noisy scrape a last defiant flourish. Her chin was lifted stubbornly. "Repeat what you just said," the teacher demanded. Her voice now completely devoid of worth, carved into a blade of ice. Emma shrugged, the movement causing the crisp fabric of her blue uniform shirt to rustle. I said you've explained this a dozen times. Maybe if you explained it better, people wouldn't be so confused. The sarcasm was heavy, unmistakable. The silence that followed was deathly. It swallowed all sound, including the persistent tick of the wall clock, which seemed to hesitate, intimidated by the sudden absence of noise. Mrs. Albright took a slow step forward. Her black heels clicked against the tiled floor, each sound a precise, authoritative beat. "That is not how you address your teacher, Emma," she said evenly. "You will apologize." Emma let out a soft, mocking laugh, shaking her head. "For what? Telling the truth?" A collective intake of breath swept through the room. Several students dropped their heads, their faces hot with vicarious shame and fear. Mrs. Albright's face remained composed, but her tone dropped to steel. "Enough. Talking back once is bad enough. Continuing after being warned is a serious offense." Emma's smile faltered, a hairline crack in her facade. She quickly masked it with another theatrical eye roll. "Whatever." The single word was the final transgression, the point of no return. Mrs. Albright walked to her desk. Every eye in the room followed her with hypnotic tread. She opened a drawer, and the sound of the wood sliding against wood was amplified in the oppressive silence. She pulled out a long, thin cane. It was a dark, polished wood, simple and unadorned. She didn't brandish it. She didn't raise her voice. She simply held it, the weight of its presence speaking volumes. A ripple of profound unease swept through the students. They knew this tool. They knew its purpose. It was not a prop. It was a promise. "Front of the room," the teacher commanded. Emma's bravado completely evaporated. Her eyes darted around the silent room, finally registering the full, paralyzing weight of the public spectacle she had created. Her cheeks burned with shame. Her steps were reluctant, her blue uniform skirt rustling softly as she walked the long, empty distance to the front. "Stand straight," the teacher instructed. Her voice was controlled, carrying a gravity that crushed all remaining traces of Emma's arrogance. Emma obeyed, her jaw clenching stubbornly against the inevitable. Mrs. Albright looked her directly in the eye. "You think it is clever to mock, to talk back, to try and humiliate the one guiding you. Respect is not optional, Emma. Today, you will learn that lesson." The cane swished lightly through the air as the teacher raised it. It was a precise, professional motion. Each swish was a promise of sharp, undeniable discipline. The classroom remained utterly silent, an audience of frozen witnesses to the strict restoration of order. The strokes came. The specifics are not necessary, but the sound was clear. A sharp, decisive thwack that cut through the silence, followed by the muffled impact on the fabric of the blue uniform. Emma flinching violently, her earlier smirk erased, replaced by an expression of tight-lipped regret and shock. Her eyes watered instantly, and she fought a desperate, internal war to maintain her composure in front of her classmates. The humiliation, the public exposure of her failure, stung worse than the physical consequences. When it was over, the teacher lowered the cane and set it back on her desk with quiet, absolute finality. "Go back to your seat," she instructed. Emma's steps were small, her face deeply flushed. Her blue uniform was neat, but her confidence was shattered, crumbled into dust. She sank into her chair, staring down at the polished wood of her desk. No more tapping, no more eye rolls. Only the hot, persistent sting of shame. Mrs. Albright surveyed the class, her authority now completely, irrevocably reestablished. "Let this be a reminder," she stated. "Talking back, mocking, and disrespect have no place here. Discipline exists because without it, there is no order, no learning, and no growth." No one dared to speak. The air was heavy with the palpable weight of the lesson, a thick, suffocating atmosphere of consequence. Emma blinked rapidly, the world blurring with the tears she adamantly refused to let fall. She risked a glance at the teacher, who was already returning to the chalkboard, resuming the lesson as though the moment of discipline had been nothing more than a minor punctuation mark in the educational process. The class, still stunned, bent back to their notebooks. Emma sat still, her pride deeply bruised. But beneath the shame, a small, profound shift was occurring. She replayed her actions, the sarcasm, the smirk, the attempt to belittle the one who held authority. In her mind, it had been a clever act. In reality, it had been cheap, cruel, and profoundly disrespectful. She looked around. Some classmates avoided her gaze entirely. Others shot quick glances filled with pity, or worse, detached judgment. Her stomach knotted painfully. For the first time, Emma truly grasped how her actions reflected not only on her own character, but on the respect owed to the entire structure of the classroom. She had crossed an unforgivable line, and the consequences had been swift, precise, and entirely just. Her hand tightened around her pen. Slowly, deliberately, she began writing again, forcing her focus onto the notes. The lesson continued, the teacher's calm authority undisturbed. But the student was no longer the same. The sting of the discipline lingered, not just on her, but deep in her mind, in her newfound humility and in her conscience. When the bell finally rang, the loud, jarring sound felt like a reprieve. Students rose quietly, filing out with hushed voices. The room emptied, the noise in the hallway contrasting sharply with the silence Emma now inhabited. She lingered, gathering her things slowly, the weight of her school bag feeling heavy. The teacher approached her desk, her expression softer now, the cold steel receding slightly. "Emma," she said quietly. Emma looked up, the shame a physical ache in her chest. "Yes, ma'am." "You have potential," the teacher said, her voice measured. "But arrogance will destroy it. Respect builds character, and character is the only thing that lasts. I expect better from you." Emma swallowed, her throat tight and dry. "I'm sorry," she whispered. The words were genuine, stripped of all sarcasm and defiance. The teacher gave a brief, firm nod, a gesture of acknowledgement, not coddling. Then she turned and moved to organize papers on her desk. Emma slung her bag over her shoulder. Her steps were heavy as she left the classroom. Outside, the hallway buzzed with the chaotic noise of high school life, but her mind was quiet, reflective. The sting of humiliation remained, a sharp memory, but so did a newfound determination. Never again, she thought, the resolution firming her gaze. Never again would she let her pride make her foolish. The painful lesson had been delivered, and the seeds of true respect had finally been planted in the silent aftermath. Asterisk. This story is a stark reminder that authority and respect aren't not given. They are earned and maintained through clear boundaries. Now, we want to hear your thoughts on this challenging moment of discipline. What is the most memorable moment when you realized you had shown genuine disrespect to a figure of authority, teacher, parent, or boss, and how did that realization change your behavior? Do you believe this type of firm public discipline is ever justified in a classroom setting to maintain order and teach respect, or should all discipline be private? If you were Emma, what would be the first thing you did the next day to show your teacher that the lesson was truly understood?